So let's do The Founder, which is a biographical drama about Ray Kroc, whose name, again, I didn't know before, but very important in McDonald's. The film is directed, but you look like you didn't know that name either.
No, I just think it's a good comedy name. Okay. It lends itself to all kinds of jokes, which we won't be...
Very good. Okay, so it's directed by John Lee Hancock, whose previous credits include Blindside and Saving Mr. Banks. And so Michael Keaton is Ray Kroc. And at the beginning, he's a sort of travelling salesman who is desperately attempting to sell a multi-funneled milkshake maker. And he's on the road and he's not doing very well. And we see him going to all these different places and basically being shown the door. And he's ringing back to his wife, Laura Doan. There's a sort of, shades of Death of a Salesman about all this. There's this kind of sense of tragedy in the back of it. And then he hears from his office that there is one place that has ordered not one of these machines, but a whole bunch of them. He thinks it must be a mistake. But they said, no, we need a whole bunch of them. So he decides to drive down and go and see, I think it's San Bernardino that he goes to. And he finds this walk-up burger stand where these brothers have basically designed this way of making burgers in a certain way, very, very fast, always the same. Everything is kind of, worked out with, sort of super efficiency. And he walks up and he sees everybody else coming up and everybody else buying these hamburgers and sitting down. And he thinks, this is brilliant, because he's been out on the road. He's been trying to get, and he's never seen service like this before. So he says, please show me how this is all working. And they show him how they planned the whole shop out, that, the person stands here with the pickles and the person stands there with the patties and the person does the thing. And it's almost like, something out of Chaplin or Modern Times, like a kind of machinery working. And he falls in love with the idea, but he says they have to expand. In fact, what they have to do is to franchise.
Franchise.
Beg pardon?
Franchise. Franchise the damn thing. It's too damn good for just one location. There should be McDonald's everywhere, coast to coast, sea to shining sea.
Mr. Kroc.
Hey, I've got a confession I want to make to you boys. I'm not out here in California for any kind of business meetings. I came out here for you. A few days ago, I got into St. Louis, Missouri, and I was doing some business, and I broke out my map. And I followed my finger on one single highway west. Route 66. And something told me to get into my car and drive that highway. And you know where it led me? Right here. Right smack dab here. Right to this unbelievable establishment. And when I saw these lines and your whole operation and I tasted your product, I knew what needed to happen. Franchise. Franchise, 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 franchise.
We already tried.
Keyword in that sentence, obviously, is franchise.
Franchise.
So what then happens is he signs a deal with them, and the brothers are very, very nervous. One brother more nervous than the other about, well, we did this before and it didn't work out, and I don't know a thing, and, we've got this thing that we do, and this is what he says, no, you got to expand it. So they sign a deal, and then he just goes off to expand the restaurant chain, to build the Golden Arches, to create this empire. What's interesting about the film is it starts off looking like an advert. I mean, literally looking like an advert. Think like, well, this is the glorious story of the creation of this thing. I mean, I can't say that I'm somebody who frequents McDonald's.
Being a veg and all, although they have...
Yeah, I'm sure they have vegetarian options, and that's fine. So, but then what happens is the relationship between him and the brothers who started this thing, and from whom he essentially said, I was going to sign this piece of paper, Johnny, and they weren't, one of them worried that this was perhaps not the greatest idea to get into bed with this guy, who, on the one hand, at the beginning, he seemed, like I said, a slightly tragic figure, and yet somebody who has, belief and vision, all the rest of it, and it gradually starts to go sour. And what's really good about it is that the way it goes sour happens, not quite imperceptibly, but gently enough that it never does that cliched thing about somebody who seemed to be one thing suddenly turns on a dime and turns into something else. What you realize is that all those things that you kind of found slightly sympathetic and engaging about the character that Keaton is playing at the beginning are exactly the same things that start to make him intolerable and insufferable and untrustworthy. And you get a film which is a portrait of somebody who seems, a bit crazy, but charming, but essentially narcissistic, who actually turns out to be really crazy and very, very narcissistic and very, very driven in a way which will make him untrustworthy in terms of a business deal. And so the whole film then starts to seem like, it's an old story, but it's also a contemporary story. It's a story about, business dealing. It's a story about something small being turned into something big and on the way losing something, particularly suddenly it's to do with powdered milkshakes as opposed to milk in milkshakes. And there is this argument going on between the brothers about what it was that they were setting up and him about what it is that he thinks he's doing, which ends up coming down essentially to an argument about who owns their name. And the more the movie goes on, the darker it becomes. And again, I saw it not knowing much about it at all, just knowing that it was, Michael Keaton, who I think is Michael Keaton has had a ketonescence.
He has, hasn't he?
I mean, he really has, because there was a point when Michael Keaton's career was not doing so well at all.
He's in like the worst movies ever.
He was in, it was weird. He'd gone from, these kind of great movies like Batman, and then suddenly he was making terrible films, and then he refound his feet. He was in things like Birdman, which is obviously, really interesting film. In this, his performance is I think it is very well played, because he manages to do that thing about taking a character who at first you're kind of rooting for. And as I said, the clever thing about it is all the things that kind of makes you kind of root for him at the beginning are all the things that kind of make you not root for him as the film goes on. The portrayal of the brothers is really well done, John Carroll Lynch and Nick Offerman. And the film manages to keep an even keel and not tip over into just simply making, this good, this bad. I mean, it tells its story in fairly broad strokes, but they are broad strokes that are committed with a degree of subtlety that I didn't expect from the story. I mean, it's not life changing, but it was much better than I expected it to be.
It's not Super Size Me.
It's not Super Size Me.
Would it work as a double bill?
It wouldn't not work as a double bill, actually. Weirdly enough.
Which one would you show first?
You'd show this first and then Super Size Me. Yes, actually, that would be a great double bill.